We're going to talk about oxidative stress and inflammation, and just to talk about that as the leading cause of disease. So that's why we're talking about it. If any of you, are you familiar with oxidative stress, inflammation, and the fact that that is the leading cause of disease, all disease, right? So we'll go ahead and get started. All right. I'm Paul Barattiero. I've been lecturing for 20 plus years in the natural medicine. Was in the Truth About Cancer documentaries, and most every month I'm in some summit of some kind. So you may or may not have seen my face. That's usually, they're like, I know you from somewhere. But anyways, that's me. Been happily married for 27 years to the love of my life, Jacqueline. But I'm going to jump in, and because of the fact that we have health freedom, I'm going to spend a few minutes in the beginning just talking about that and how our lifestyle and how our choices translate into health freedom. So obviously I'm the CEO and founder of Synergy Science. This is a worldwide company. We develop cutting edge medical products that actually are curative from a solution perspective, fixing the problems instead of band-aiding, right? We're not fans of band-aiding problems. We are headquartered in Pleasant Grove, Utah. We were headquartered in Florida, and then 3 years ago moved to Utah and have fallen in love with the mountains and really enjoy Utah. But this is our purpose is to assist individuals in accomplishing their divine potential. And so that's a little bit about who we are. This is our building. You're welcome to come and visit us sometime. And we're right next to doTERRA, if any of you guys know doTERRA. We're about 10 minutes away from Young Living. We're in that MLM mecca. I don't know what you want to call it. We're not an MLM, but we're surrounded by about 150 of them. But yeah, my 2 acres and doTERRA's property literally like touch. So anyways, that's our building. This is our product categories. We're into hydrogen water, which I'm going to explain to you the relationship with the gut and and oxidative stress, inflammation, mitochondrial function, what have you. We get into filtration. We get into the best portable sauna in the world, and we'll be adding air filtration, red light therapy beds, and a number of things later this year. So that's me. You're looking at me. I don't know, does that look like me? But anyways, that's a little bit about us. These are some people that use our products on a daily basis, and pretty amazing individuals up there, some powerful women, right? And so they're good. And here's some equal diet with some men, right? How about that? And a powerful woman as well, Dr. Keneally. She's awesome. But all these individuals use and endorse our products and what have you. So my question to you, we're here at the Health Freedom Expo. So Julie, I got to put that down a little bit. Julie, her father started this tradition, right? The school and the Health Freedom. We're here to celebrate health freedom, learn. So the big question is, freedom really is the right to choose. It's not any other reason. It's a right, isn't it? It's a right. And who gave us that right? Who said that? God, right? It wasn't your neighbor. It wasn't the President of the United States. It wasn't a queen or a king way back. It was a king, but it was God. That's where our right to choose. And I would say we do not have freedoms unless we have the right to choose. And that means those that want to choose something different than us should have that right, and we should have the right to do what we want, right? And so without agency, the purposes of life are frustrated. I use that word. I would say it's pointless, but I use the word frustrated to be soft, right? But the reality is, if we don't have the right to choose, or if we're not choosing anything, then what are we really gaining? If we're forced to do what we do, there is no real gain that any of us have. And I would tell you from my life, I'm not the oldest in here, but the lessons I've learned in my life came from opposition or came from making choices against opposition. And that's really when we learn. We don't learn when we're sitting on, I was just in Cancun 2 weeks ago, didn't learn much while I was laying on the beach.
Yeah.
Other than I like the blue water. But other than that, what are you learning? Opposition brings us to a point of learning. So agency is the right, and I would submit to you, it's worth fighting for. If we don't fight for our rights because we value them, then we may lose them. And then hindsight is always 20/20 because we look back and go, oh my gosh, what the heck, we were asleep, right? Now we know what we're missing, but it might be too late. So what does that have to do with health? So here we're talking about health freedom. It has to do with what's going in our body, right? And who should control what goes into our body? Us, right, and no one else. And so, you know, I said to a few people, if someone wants to put vaccines in their smoothie every morning, I don't care. I'll be honest, I don't care. But don't make me put a vaccine in my smoothie in the morning. That should be my choice. And so when we talk about health freedom, it's based on the ability to choose what goes into our body. But that's a double-edged sword, because whether it's harmful things or things that we deem harmful, what if it's just our daily intake of food? Can that harm us? Absolutely. And some more than others. And so we're going to get into a little bit about that today. So we have this ability, and down at the third bullet point, if we are sick, how many choices do we have? Or does that limit our choice if we're sick? When we are, quote unquote, perfectly healthy, then our choices are wider, aren't they? We have more choices to do things, to enjoy life, to enjoy this. But if we're sick, all of a sudden we just narrowed our choices. And it really does come. And so I typically lecture, I focus a lot on the gut, because that's really where our immune function is. That is where, in my opinion, everything starts or stops, is in the gut. 70% of immune, and really what we're talking about is bacteria. The bacteria that's in the gut, the terrain and the biome of the gut, is everything. And I would submit that to you. Do some topical studies, figure that out. But I will tell you, the gut is the most important thing we focus on, because it really regulates everything else. So we really need to be educated, and that's why you're here. Congrats. And we need to, on a daily basis, make choices and become educated on what things can disrupt the biome or the terrain of our gut, and what things don't disrupt our gut. And hopefully when I'm done in the next few minutes, you will understand why disease models come as a result of gut dysfunction, period. That's why you have them. So let's get into it. What is immune function? How many of you heard the word in the last year and a half, immune? I think we all have. It's been shoved down our throat, right? So if anything came from this craziness going on in this world, it's the fact that we heard immune function, and hopefully some of us picked up on it is a choice. But there are 3 types of immune function, and we'll go over those in just a few minutes. And we're going to talk about how to reduce and how to increase immune function in our body, because we're in control of our immune function. No one else is in control. Well, there are some people, actually. We'll talk about that too. But you are in control of your own immune function. And this is like saying every country is in control of its military. And understand, you need to think of it in that way. We talk a lot about leaky gut. We have all kinds of nonsense marketing terms for gut dysfunction. Leaky gut, like is stuff coming down your leg. What's leaky gut, right? Like, what is that really? But gut dysfunction means we have an imbalance in bacteria. And if you have dysfunctioning gut, and we just said that 70% of immune function is tied to gut, if you have a dysfunctioning gut, what percentage of immune function are you walking around with every day? 30?
Yeah.
So are you susceptible, more or less, than someone else who has a gut that is not dysfunctioning? And that's the big question. That's where the education comes in. And so what can we do for your family, yourself, patients, clients, whatever your situation is? So the immune system is a complex network of what? Cells, systems, all kinds of things, right? I got to oversimplify because I only have 45 minutes. But the immune system keeps a record. This is what we believe, right? This is what we believe at least. It keeps a record of every germ or thing that enters into our system. Now that is based on whether or not we have tonsils and whether or not the stuff came in from here, right? If it is injected in you, it bypasses tonsils, it bypasses our normal processing system, and all of a sudden it's in, right? And the body's like, what the heck happened? But this is what our immune system is supposed to do. It's supposed to keep track of things that come in. It wonderfully organizes the data, and then when it has that thing come back, it's like, uh-oh, get rid of that before it goes in, right? That's what your immune function is supposed to do. And so it really protects you, the host, from environmental conditions. That's really what it is. So innate immunity is what you came into this world with, okay? That is what you were born with, whether it's from your mother, other genetic code and other things that happen from your mom. Depends on how you were born, right? There's a lot that gets into immune function. But innate is what you entered this world with. Adaptive is what you have based on your choices. Whether it's diet, whether there are certain things that you do and don't do, your body adapts, your immune function adapts, and you end up having a changed immune function based on diet, based on stress, based on all kinds of things, okay? And then passive is borrowed. Could be from a mother's breast milk. It could be something you've taken that has a short-term life of boosting immune function, okay? But that's what we call passive. So these are the three basic types of immune function, okay? So 70% of immune function is related to the gastrointestinal tract. Health of the gut means what? The percentage of anaerobic microflora. Why? Because I'm oversimplifying, but why is it based on anaerobic microflora? You have aerobic as well, but why is anaerobic more important than aerobic? And is it more important? It's not really. Balance is the most important thing. We need to have it balanced. If you have over amounts of either, then that's what we start to call dysfunction, okay? But what happens when we have aerobic bacteria is we begin to have sugar cravings, carbohydrate cravings, stress, and behavioral issues, okay? Anxiety, things like this, because we should only have 1 to 4% aerobic bacteria. We should have, vast majority should be up to 96%, should be anaerobic. And the reason being is because anaerobic converts fatty acids and converts fiber into hydrogen gas. And some other things, methane, hydrogen, there's a number of gases that are produced in the gut. But that's all regulatory in our system. Hydrogen gas, for example, is a regulatory process with over 200 biomolecules in the body, and it is considered a reducer. So you have oxidation and you have reduction. These are our two main forces in the body, and if we keep them balanced, what do we call that? Homeostasis, right? So if we have reduction that's too high or low, if we have oxidation that's too high or too low, we end up with stress and we end up with issues. And that's how we get to oxidative stress, is when oxidation rises past a normal range, we end up with oxidative stress. Then we end up with what? Inflammation. And then we end up with disease. Okay, that's your process. So I always say, build it and they will come. You probably watched that baseball movie all those years ago, and they said, build it and they will come. Well, if you build your terrain in your gut back, and that's an electrical thing, then the bacteria come. It's not like we need to seed it. It's not like we need to put it there with probiotics. If you create the environment, anaerobic microflora come. They're selectively stimulated, okay? Done it many times with individuals with gut dysfunction. And I know that's different thinking because so much is taught to seed things, right? But that's not true. We don't need to seed things. We need to think in the way of an environment or a biome. Everything is there, positive and negative. And what you build the environment for, that's what thrives. Does that make sense? I don't know if that should make sense, but it does. It's truth, but you need to understand that if I took a bag of meat and sealed that bag and left no air in it and put it out on the sidewalk, what would happen to that in a day or so? What is it? Rotten? Maggots? Right? So where'd they come from? If it was a sealed bag, and we put it on the sidewalk, where'd all that stuff come from that started making stuff? It was already there. So we need to think of a biome, we need to think of a terrain and a biome as an independent community with positive and negative within its ability, and based on what we're stimulating in it, then that grows. And the same thing would be true for an aquarium. That's probably a little easier for you to think about, but an aquarium is like that. You have an aquarium with living fish, and as long as you keep that water balanced, it's beautiful. The second it's out of balance, what happens? Algae. But where'd the algae come from? And when you clean the water and balance it back, where does the algae go? Because the water turns clear again. So understand, think of things in the way of a biome, and your gut is a biome. Whatever you stimulate in that biome, that's what grows. That's what lives and thrives. So don't think of it in a way of having to think of making a healthy environment, and then the healthy things come. Okay, yes, sir.
Could you go over again the aquarium argument for maybe?
Yeah, it's just simply, it's about keeping the water or your terrain. In an aquarium, the biome and the terrain is the water, right? What gives you your opposition is the poop coming from the fish. So if you don't vacuum that out, you have nitrates, you have nitrites, you have other things that get out of balance. And what will happen is your water gets out of balance, and then it starts growing algae and things. First in the corners where it's dark, right? But then it'll take over. And to go a little bit further on, if you watch the fish, they will have signs of stress. Their fins will be clamped, they'll be swimming differently, but you can pay attention to the results of the biome in the fish. And if we act then we can save the fish. If we continue going down the road, they'll get a bacterial infection called ick and they'll die, right? I mean, it's just a process. So bacteria and terrain is all about polarity and electrical when it comes to our gut. So down here, where I say, let me see if that works. Oh, there it is. Negative 300 millivolts. So if you're trying to modulate or change the terrain of your gut, if you get the tissue to a negative 300 millivolts or higher, it will selectively stimulate anaerobic microflora. And that's how to do it. So I just gave you the secret, the greatest thing you'll learn, because how many of you don't know how to rehab a gut? How many of you are like, I have no idea. If someone has a serious gut issue and they're allergic to every food possible and every week is different and I test them and it's like a moving target, I have no idea what to tell them. Do I give them salads? Well, they'll have diarrhea if they don't have the right bacteria. Well, do I give them fruit? What do I give them to help them? I just gave you the answer within a week or two to rehab a gut, and that's to get the epithelial tissue or the tissue of the lining of the gastrointestinal tract to a negative 300 millivolts or higher. And when you do that, you'll selectively stimulate anaerobic microflora. That means you've created the environment again for the proper bacteria that should be living there. And when they come, now you can digest food properly and not have diarrhea. Because the bacteria are like, oh, I'll eat salad. Okay, that's great. Fatty acids, fiber, love it. Aerobic bacteria, they can't process fiber. So you're gonna have diarrhea, right? Because you have improper fermentation. Anyone who's made kombucha or kefir knows what happens when you have improper fermentation. So let's go to the next. So how is immune function reduced? I think you understand EMFs, ELFs, radio frequencies, but really it's overuse of antibiotics. That's the most rapid impact to the gut. If we do one round of antibiotic, you have wiped out the terrain. Okay? 3 days, 1 day, they have Z-Paks that are 1 day now. Just 1 day, change your life. So consumption of pesticides, obviously glyphosate, other pesticides, heavy metals, stress, relationships, toxic people. There's a number of ways to get to a gut that's not functioning. Obviously lifestyle, diet, you know, we can, there's plenty of pathways to harm our gut. There's plenty of them. I would say antibiotics, overuse. So what do I mean by when I say overuse? Because antibiotics are life-sustaining if you have a life-threatening bacterial infection, right? But if you have a virus, why are we giving antibiotics? Because they're not designed for viral. They're designed for bacterial infection and life-threatening bacterial infections. That's a good use of antibiotics. Now you have to rehab the gut afterwards, but it is better than dying, right? So here we have the fact that when the gut bacteria is out of balance, I want you to read that last one. Immune function is reduced as the body is trying to fix the gut issues instead of attacking pathogens. This is another major issue, that when you're compromised, that last bullet point is a huge one for those that have gut issues that have been battling it for a long time because they're in a cycle, okay? So how can you increase? Vitamin C, minerals, probiotics. These are all short term. Probiotics, no matter what you've been taught, probiotics do not fix the gut. They are there as a Band-Aid, okay? What fixes the gut? Let's see if I've done a half decent job. What fixes a gut? Correct. And how do we change the biome? What's the fastest, easiest way? Electrical, yes. We get the tissue to what? Thank you. A negative 300 millivolts of electrical potential or higher. Okay, good job. Good job, class. Yay. All right. So it was right there. Yes?
Is there a way to test the negative 300 millivolts?
Yes, absolutely you can. You can test a lot of things in the gut.
Is there like a device or muscle testing?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, you can muscle test anything. I don't know that I would go that route, but yeah, you can test a lot. Fecal matter, you can go in and test a lot of things, yes. Now, I'm going to show you how I chose. After learning this, I chose a mechanism and developed something for that makes it a lot easier than testing poop, but it's good. So here's a study I found from Moscow showing, and this is the part I want you to focus on, right here. Electrolyzed reduced water with values between 0 and negative 300 millivolts can what? Produce electrolysis. Drinking such water favors the growth of residential microflora, a sufficient array of data. And so they talk about gut issues. I have found that's the fastest way to get it into the tissue, is to bathe the tissue in water that has negative electrical potential. Does it make sense? Right? If you get in water with chlorine, what do you smell like? Yeah, so your skin is wonderfully absorbent. And so if we give the gut water that has a negative electrical potential, then the tissue takes on the negative electrical potential. It's the fastest way. I can outpace an antibiotic with water with this property. I can grow good bacteria faster than you can kill it. Isn't that interesting? So this is a good study from a long time ago. Anyways, it's a good study. And this is great. So let's talk a little bit about oxidative radicals. So there is a cycle in your body when you are fighting pathogens that creates a dysfunctioning gut if we're out of balance. This is your process. So immune function produces oxygen radicals while fighting pathogens. Oxygen radicals create oxidative stress. Oxidative stress produces chronic inflammation. Oxidative stress and inflammation are leading causes of disease, and therefore a dysfunctioning immune system results in oxidative stress, inflammation, and disease. Okay? That's your process. That's your pathway to get to that. So where do we stop that process? If the gut is functioning properly, way back up, when the oxygen radicals are creating oxidative stress, they are handled then by the gut. Okay? Because the gut has an what? Antioxidant system. And part of that is hydrogen gas. And we should be, and I'm gonna say this now because I'll say it later, we should be producing 10 to 12 liters of hydrogen gas per day through 3 meals. So what does that mean? I just said you're supposed to be farting. That's what I just said, right? If you're all 14, more of you would have laughed. But so here's the deal. 10 to 12 liters of gas. And yes, it's methane, and you got some sulfur for eating certain types of foods, but hydrogen and methane are your main two. And so what's interesting about the anaerobic microflora, and specifically the hydrogen trophs, these are little bacteria in the gut that are part of the anaerobic microflora family called hydrogen trophs. They convert fatty acids and fiber into hydrogen gas, and then 30% of the hydrogen gas they consume as their energy source. So they're creating their own food. Isn't that beautiful to think about? So they consume fiber and fatty acids, they produce hydrogen, and then that hydrogen they use as energy source, and the 70% goes into our body, and we get regulation of oxidation. We have biomolecules regulated. We have all kinds of things. Ghrelin secretions. I don't know how many of you have heard of gastric ghrelin, or you know about the okay, so you have leptin and you have ghrelin, 2 master hormones in the body. Ghrelin is also called the hunger hormone. You might be reminded then. But ghrelin secretions go to the hippocampus, the hypothalamus, and the brainstem to increase cognitive function. That's where you don't get Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, autism. That's what stops these neurologic issues is ghrelin. Okay? So without hydrogen stimulating ghrelin, we have neural issues. Okay? So Dr. Wakefield and I, who are good friends, we're going to begin a process with some moms that have autistic children, and it's really simple. We give them water that has the negative electrical potential to rehab the gut, and it also has hydrogen gas dissolved in it. And amazingly, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, you see brain change. And I'll show you a picture of a couple of them here in a few minutes. But this is what we're doing. I'll do that tomorrow. EMFs, I'm talking tomorrow at 10 o'clock in the morning. Come. So if the problem is oxidative stress and inflammation, here is a fun little chart of the diseases you could choose by having oxidative stress and inflammation. But look at the list. It's pretty far-reaching. I mean, did any of you think bipolar disorder was from oxidative stress and inflammation? I never thought of that until I learned this. I mean, you just think like neurologic issue, they got to take their medication or they're horrible to deal with, right? But you don't think if it's oxidative stress and inflammation, that means you could change it by lowering oxidative stress and inflammation. Same as all these issues. I mean, you're talking about every major disease. If I was to have a raise of hands of anyone who has or knows anyone, there would be no hands left down. You'd raise both of them, right? So the reality is oxidative stress and inflammation is the cause of disease. And it's important that we understand it's simply an imbalance between the production of radicals and the regulation or the completion or restructuring of those radicals. In other words, they should be turned into something else, but that's not happening. They end up being what? Hydroxyl radicals in the mitochondrial respiratory chain. That's the ones we have a problem with, is the hydroxyl radicals that go into our mitochondrial respiratory chain when oxygen is used. Because if we have mitochondrial issues, what are we probably going to be drinking? Sugary drinks, caffeinated drinks, things that are going to boost our energy, because we don't have the ability to produce enough ATP, so we're feeling sluggish, we're gonna eat things that give us energy quick. That's why sugar. That's why athletes are sugar loading, carb loading. But the problem with carb loading and sugar loading is you end up with hydroxyl radicals, which are the most cell damage or cytotoxic oxygen radical in the human body. And that becomes your problem. It's just a cycle. But if we can get the gut repaired and then mitochondria can produce enough ATP on its own, we don't need to load with sugar and carbs, okay? So this is what happens when our bodies can't keep up with the demand we're putting on them because we have a system that is dysfunctioning, okay? So good news, hydrogen can help. What are the 3 things that hydrogen gas does? Now remember what I said earlier, you're supposed to be producing hydrogen. The creator of your body put a hydrogen generator right inside of you. And you should be making hydrogen regularly. The problem is when you have a damaged gut, you do not produce hydrogen. And so oxidation is constantly on the rise and the body is trying many different mechanisms to regulate it. And it produces stress. Okay, that's where your adrenal issues, there's a lot of stuff that comes because your body is taxed and it's trying to overcome the fact that it's not functioning. And so it uses every possible thing that it can, okay? But reduce oxidative stress, repair gut, and increase cognitive function. Those are 3 things hydrogen does. I don't know anyone who doesn't want 1, 2, or 3 of those things, right? It's pretty typical. You're like, nah, I don't want my brain to be bitter. Nope, no. So these are the things we can do. Now, relationship of gut and immune. 70% of immune is related to the gut. Health gut means proper anaerobic microflora. Bacterian terrain is all about polarity and electrical potential. Build it, okay, did you notice I put this in a second time? Okay, the 3 people did. Okay, this is why I put it in there a second time. You're like, yeah, it's vaguely familiar. All right, so this is the second time also. Why? Because I want you guys to understand it's simpler than you think to fix a gut or to have someone have proper immune function. We shouldn't be walking around going, dang, I don't know what to do about a gut. I don't know what to do about inflammation. I don't know what to do. So let's talk about some studies. How about that? Now, we spent considerable money and time and about 1.5 years of putting together hydrogenstudies.com. This is the best website in the world for hydrogen studies to research them. You can study, there's 1,092 studies in this database showing every disease. There's over 200 disease models that are regulated or benefited by hydrogen gas, including every type of cancer you can imagine, diabetes, Parkinsons, Alzheimer's, autism, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease was just last year. I mean, that's pretty cool, right? So imagine, you get hydrogen in your body, you don't get fatter when you have non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. Pretty interesting. So we put together hydrogenstudies.com. You can research on there. You can type in any topic you want. You can go by subject, by country, by year, whatever you want to do. You can dissect the data as much as you want. Now, the thing I will tell you is studies are studies, even though these are double-blind, many of them, and amazing studies doesn't mean there's a guarantee, right? The only guarantee you have is paying taxes and dying. So that's it. So hydrogenstudies.com, go visit it, go look up. If you have clients, patients, family members, yourself that have issues, type it in, see if hydrogen can help you. More times than not, you'll be surprised that there's an amazing study on that topic and that there was a great benefit. After 1,092 studies, not one single contraindication. Does that surprise you? Why? Because you're supposed to make it in your gut. So you shouldn't have a contraindication for a gas you produce in your gut, or you'd be killing yourself every day if you had a proper gut. So it shouldn't hurt you, right? Okay, this is the foundational study, Nature Medicine, published in 2009. This simply was talking about the fact that hydrogen is a selective antioxidant. That means it doesn't, what? React with things that are beneficial or have what we call a physiological role in the body. This is saying that it just reacted with hydroxyl radicals, which is the most cytotoxic oxygen radical in the human body. Okay? So this freaked everyone out. And you can see the last line. Thus, H2 can be used as an effective antioxidant therapy, owing its ability to rapidly diffuse across membranes. It can reach and react with cytotoxic reactive oxygen species and thus protect against oxidative damage. It's pretty strong language, okay? Here's one on cancer. Colon cancer. There are many cancer studies, but colon cancer. This happens to be the company that made 5-fluorouracil, which is the chemotherapy drug of choice for colon cancer. So why do you think they did a study on hydrogen? They wanted to see what happens when they mix hydrogen, water, with the chemotherapy. What do you think they found? Any guesses? Well, let's read what it says. So, first of all, it says hydrogen is a potent antioxidant and exhibits anti-inflammatory and potentially anti-cancer-like activities in the body. Okay, that's primary. And what? I don't want to be a liar, so oxidative stress is involved with cancer. So I told you oxidative stress inflammation is the leading cause of disease. You have 1,092 studies that all pretty much start out that way by saying oxidative stress is a cause for diabetes, cancer, whatever it is. So they wanted to investigate 5-fluorouracil, and they wanted to see what would happen with water. So hydrogen water administration improved the survival of mice with colon 26 induced cancer. Furthermore, hydrogen water enhanced cell apoptosis in cancer cells. First major hint, cell apoptosis. That means the cells are going to destroy themselves like they're supposed to. Huge. Then finally, high content hydrogen water, like what the machine I developed makes, exhibited stronger antioxidative and anti-cancer activity than did natural hydrogen water. In conclusion, high content hydrogen water can inhibit colon cancer, particularly in combination with 5-fluorouracil. So hydrogen water got a huge plug because they're like, it'll inhibit colon cancer. That's pretty serious. How many studies do you have where they say something inhibits a disease that's not a drug? Hydrogen water is not a drug. But they're saying, what? It inhibits colon cancer. And then why do they say particularly in combination with 5-fluorouracil? Because once you've activated cell apoptosis and then you throw a chemotherapy drug, amazingly, it was 100% cancer cell death in the individuals. So they're like, yeah, it was a combination with our drug and hydrogen water. Now, this was a very long study, and I will tell you the natural hydrogen water they got was from Mount Fuji in Japan. At the top of the mountain, there is water that naturally has hydrogen gas in it. You can go to India, rivers, you can go to New Mexico, you can go to Washington State, you can go to many different places in the world where naturally occurring hydrogen water, and people have been going to those springs and places for years. What I simply did was create a machine so you don't have to go to Mount Fuji to get water, okay? So that's what we've done. Next, hydrogen water improves lipid and glucose metabolism in patients with type 2 diabetes, okay? Now, what we also see is IGT. 80% of the individuals in the study with IGT, or impaired glucose tolerance, were normalized in an 8-week study. We also see that LDL levels were reduced by 15.5%. So that's interesting that we didn't use a statin and we reduced cholesterol by 15.5% in these individuals. Why do we think that is? Because we reduced oxidative stress. Oxidative stress reduction no longer had the venous insufficiency. In other words, the veins and vessels were not in trouble anymore. So the body didn't have to put cholesterol as a patch, right? I have a lot of people look at me like, I don't know what in the world you're talking about. So cholesterol is put in veins and vessels when they're going to rupture or when the body thinks they're weak or you have elasticity issues within the veins and vessels. So in this study, because you lowered oxidative stress systemically, the elasticity came back and the body then took back the LDL or the cholesterol that it put there in the first place, okay? So just like inflammation is the body trying to help itself, if you don't do anything about the source, the inflammation itself becomes a bigger problem. Same is true for cholesterol. Initially, it's a wonderful tool the body has to help itself from hemorrhaging, but all of a sudden, if you don't take away the source problem, you get high blood pressure and you could have issues, right? Because you end up with an occlusion, too much cholesterol, okay? But this is a great study. Imagine if you or someone you knew had diabetes and you could have a benefit. Here's Parkinson's. I won't spend a lot of time. Again, you have hydrogenstudies.com, you can go, but this is showing what? What does it say? All I want to read to you is this. Hydrogen supplementation of drinking water has been shown to exert disease-modifying effects in Parkinson's disease patients. So if you had Parkinson's, and I don't say that lightly because it's a horrible disease, would you want to know that you could drink a certain water and it would have disease-modifying effects? What if you had a mom or a dad? This is huge. This is what we should be seeing on the news. Not the crazy nonsense we see on the news now. We should be seeing this, right? But I bet you none of you saw anything about cancer, diabetes, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, that hydrogen water could help them. No, we don't get any good stuff. So another Parkinson's. Now this is talking about ghrelin. The reason Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, autism, bipolar, schizophrenia, we have all the studies on all these, can be helped is ghrelin secretions. And what you see here is this is showing how much ghrelin the control group, atenolol, H2, atenolol and H2. And what you see is hydrogen increases ghrelin secretions more than anything else because that's what's supposed to happen naturally, okay? And as soon as you drink it in your stomach, you will have ghrelin secretions stimulated and going to the brain. Yes? This is 5 minutes. This is a 60-year-old patient, Dr. Kelly Miller. I don't know anyone know Dr. Kelly Miller. He's in Florida, but he does a lot of brain scans. And you can see there's a 32% change in plasticity in brain tissue, 58% normalization. This is a 62-year-old patient. Nothing else was done but giving them a glass of hydrogen water from my machine. And you can see the difference in this versus this, 5 minutes. So it's pretty serious, okay? All right, here is athletes. 1 second. Here's athletes, and it just showed that they had no fatigue. There was no lactate buildup in the muscles, okay? And we have athletes. You saw Layla Ali originally. She's one of the best boxers. She uses our products. She's having some issues, Parkinson's and stuff like her dad, and she uses it. It's changed her life. We have currently a university adding our water to all their sports teams very soon because they don't fatigue, okay? We have a lot of stuff going on. These are different crazy studies like the survival innate immune activity of zebrafish. I just thought that was hilarious that they studied a zebrafish. So anyways, naturally, I told you where it should come from. In your gut, you should be producing it in your gut when you eat food if your digestion was working correctly. If you were actually digesting, it's a new concept. But if you were digesting food properly, you would create hydrogen gas and therefore you'd have flatulence. How much do you need? 0.3 to 0.5 parts per million is considered therapeutic. It's not a lot. 0.1 parts per million help neurologic, Parkinsons, for example. So it's the smallest amount of hydrogen. You really don't need a lot of hydrogen. It only stays in the body for an hour or so, but it's the signal modulation that occurs for up to 3 to 5 days, okay? So very, very good. This is just how we make it in the machine. But I'm gonna save that video. It's anyone that wants that video, I'll show it to you. We'll show it to you the booth. But the thing that I want you to understand is unlike any other water machine in the world, the electrodes are never in contact with the water you're drinking. So it's impossible to have metals coming in. All other water machines, the electrodes are directly in contact with water, and therefore you will have metals in your water. We produce hydrogen gas and then mix it with a purified stream of water in the machine, and that's what we do. And then we increase the amount of hydrogen gas because we have a dissolving chamber in our device. We do not change pH of the water. It's not what you want to do. I know there's a lot of people that have been taught that alkaline water helps you. I promise you it does not. I've been doing this for 25 years. I sold 250,000 alkaline water machines in my day, and I can promise you that is not where the benefit ever came from. It was hydrogen gas and the electrical potential, which we call ORP, oxidation reduction potential. And the problem is we've advanced the technology today to where we don't increase the pH. Because the pH can throw your body chemistry off. And that's why you have Hertzheimer effects. That's when you drink alkaline water, because it's actually throwing you off balance, not because you're detoxing, it's because you have Hertzheimer effects. So the machines that we produce, they don't change pH. You can use reverse osmosis, distilled, spring water, whatever, tap water, whatever you want, because we have purification.
Spring water there?
Oh, 100%. And you can put distilled water, because we don't require minerals or conductivity for our machines to function. All other machines in the world require conductivity in the water. Okay? We are the only machine in the world that has met the IHSA certification, which means you can put distilled water through your machine and still dissolve 0.5 parts per million that is considered therapeutic. We're the only machine in the world that's ever met this standard. And not only did we meet it, but as you can see here, with distilled water, we had 1.5 to 1.88 parts per million. So plenty of hydrogen to help you. Most pathologies are not dose dependent other than rheumatoid arthritis. So in the study that was done with RA, the more hydrogen you got, the more joints you affected faster. So having the higher amount, if someone does have RA, then you'll have more joint reduction pain rapidly. So that's the one. Most all other conditions are simply by having it in the body, you get the benefit. Yes?
So in case of harmful pathogens, how do they do in an environment where there's hydrogen? Do they thrive or do they die?
Oh, they go, because you've increased immune function. Hydrogen is not doing anything with pathologies. Hydrogen is boosting your immune function, and your body does what it's supposed to do. Yeah. Good question. So these are some of our products. You can, again, go to booth 200. We're processing the water right through the machine live. You can taste what it would taste like. You can feel. You can get as much as you want. Bring a bottle, fill it up. I promise you'll sleep better if you drink it. And in the morning, you'll have more energy. There was actually, I didn't show the study, but there's actually a study versus caffeine. Hydrogen, water versus caffeinated beverages. And hydrogen slightly overdid caffeinated drinks. So that's amazing. The fact that it just even overdid it was great. It's not by a huge margin, it was about 10%. But still, the fact that hydrogen increased energy levels more so than did caffeinated beverages. Yes, sir, and then, yep.
Does it increase energy throughout the day or does it flare off after?
Great question. It's even energy. It's going to increase your mitochondrial function. It's going to increase your energy level. It doesn't have like a sugar drop like many times. Yeah, because it's not a chemical, right? It's a gas. Yes, ma'am.
Do you replace your daily drinking water, or do you just have a certain amount of glasses per day?
Great question. I would say most every study you see on here, like the diabetes study, was 900 ml per day for those patients. So the minimum, I would say, is what you might consider a dose, 16 ounces of at least 0.5 parts per million of concentration in the water. But when people purchase the machine or the device that makes it, I would say at least 70% of their water then becomes this. Don't freak out if you're gone at the restaurant and they're giving you water. It's fine. You have a stacking effect in the body, but as long as you have, I would say, as long as you have 3 16-ounce glasses a day with at least a 0.5 parts per million concentration, it's perfect for you, okay? And you're gonna really tell a difference, major difference. So you're gonna see difference in eyes. We just had a gentleman, he was 70 years old, and he came in, he got one of our Echo Goes, it's just a little rechargeable sport bottle. And yeah, there you go. That's it, exactly. And he came back to my office. He happens to work for ABC Network in Salt Lake. And he goes, my eyesight's improved. And I went to the eye doctor and they're like, no, we need to change your prescription because your eyes are better. And he goes, it's only been 2 weeks. And he's like, is that normal? I'm like, yeah, we've had that a lot. And he goes, and I haven't had any acid reflux in 2 weeks since I've drank, like it just stopped the day I started. So to answer your question, you'll notice stuff right away. And why would you? Because your body is supposed to be producing this. You don't have a tool you're supposed to have. So as soon as you give the body that tool, it knows what to do with it. And immediately it goes to work because your body's been without it for a while. So this is our website, synergyscience.com. If you decide to purchase something, there's a code for 15% off. Trinity 15. And it doesn't have to be uppercase like that. It doesn't matter. Just Trinity 15 and go to synergysites.com. Also, you can come to our booth and ask us any questions. Last 2 questions. Yes, ma'am.
Can anyone drink this water?
Yes.
Someone who has heart problems?
Absolutely. If you want lower blood pressure, you will. Yes. So we've had the greatest one was a gentleman who was 74 years old, 34 bypass surgeries. He hasn't had one in 12 years since he started drinking our water.
So it doesn't affect their medication?
No. Pacemakers, no problem. Yes, sir.
Does it ever have a negative effect if you drink too much? Like, what if you're drinking nonstop throughout the gallon daily? So
Hydrogen cannot have a negative effect. You could theoretically drink more water than you should and have electrolyte reduction, but that's not normally the problem we experience. Most people are chronically dehydrated, not drinking too much water. Let me answer after, because I've got to close. But thank you for your time. And again, tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock.